The snow fell silently outside the Stanley Hotel, a glittering blanket covering the Rocky Mountains under the pale light of the full moon. Aaron and Lucas stepped into the grand lobby, marveling at the opulent architecture. Polished wood, crystal chandeliers, and the faint scent of lavender. The concierge handed them the key to room 217, his polite smile faltering as he added, "Let us know if you need anything unusual." Aaron laughed nervously, brushing off his odd tone. She and Lucas had driven hours for this getaway, a romantic escape to one of Colorado's most beautiful destinations. But something about the hotel's aura unsettled her. It wasn't just its storied history of hauntings, it was the weight of silence, like the building itself was holding its breath. The room was exquisite, yet strangely cold. The antique furnishings glimmered in the soft lamplight, and an old piano sat against one wall. Lucas flopped onto the bed, scrolling through his phone, while Aaron ran her fingers over the keys of the piano. A dissonant chord rang out, making her jump. "You okay?" Lucas asked, looking up. "Yeah," she said, forcing a smile. "Just startled myself." As the night deepened, Aaron woke to the sound of faint humming. She nudged Lucas, but he groaned, rolling over in his sleep. The sound grew louder, melodic yet mournful, filling the room like an unseen presence. Aaron's breath hitched as she realized the sound was coming from the piano. Trembling, she tiptoed toward it. The keys moved on their own, pressing down in a haunting waltz. She reached out to touch one, but a blast of icy air stopped her. A shadow flickered in the mirror above the piano, a figure in a maid's uniform, her face pale and gaunt. Aaron screamed, waking Lucas. "What's wrong?" he asked groggily. There's someone here," she stammered, pointing to the mirror. But the room was still, the piano silent. Lucas searched the room and found nothing. "You're just tired," he said, pulling her back to bed. But Aaron couldn't sleep. She kept glancing at the mirror, the piano, the door. The air grew colder, and a faint whisper filled her ears. "Why are you here?" Asterisk. In the morning, Aaron insisted on checking out. The receptionist listened with a knowing look. "Room 217 has a history," he said. "Elizabeth Wilson, a maid, died in an explosion there in 1911. She's protective of the room." Aaron and Lucas drove away in uneasy silence, but something felt wrong. Aaron glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. There, in the back seat, was the reflection of the maid, her hollow eyes meeting Aaron's. Lucas swerved as Aaron screamed, their car plunging into the ravine below. When rescue crews arrived hours later, they found only the mangled car. Inside were Aaron and Lucas, cold, lifeless, and seated perfectly upright. In Aaron's lap rested a room key. Engraved on it were the numbers, *217, ****, twist ending. The story concludes with the implication that the Stanley Hotel's spirits don't just haunt its walls. They follow their victims into the afterlife, keeping them trapped in an endless loop of horror. Nestled atop the hills of Eureka Springs, the Crescent Hotel loomed under a blanket of thick fog, its spires piercing the night sky. The air crackled with the chill of impending winter as Sophia and her sister Emily arrived for their much-anticipated getaway. The grand Gothic facade seemed to breathe as they entered, the aged wood floors creaking beneath their feet. "This place has character," Emily said, her voice thin with unease. Sophia grinned. "That's why I booked it. They say it's haunted, perfect for our weekend ghost hunt." Their room on the 4th floor was modest but steeped in history, with antique furniture and a faded floral wallpaper that seemed to shift in the dim light. Sophia wasted no time setting up her camera and EMF reader, eager to document any sign of the paranormal. Emily, less enthusiastic, sat on the bed, scrolling nervously through her phone. As the clock struck midnight, Sophia decided to explore the infamous basement, once a morgue when the hotel operated as a cancer hospital under the infamous Dr. Norman Baker. The sisters descended the narrow staircase, their flashlight beams slicing through the inky darkness. "People say he experimented on his patients here," Sophia whispered, excitement tinged with trepidation. Emily shuddered. "Can we not talk about that?" The basement was frigid, even colder than the chill of the winter night above. Rows of decayed, rusted medical equipment stood like sentinels, and the faint stench of antiseptic lingered in the air. Sophia's EMF reader beeped erratically, its green light flashing. "Do you feel that?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling now. Emily nodded, her eyes fixed on an old autopsy table. A sharp metallic clang echoed behind them. They whirled around, hearts pounding. "Who's there?" Sophia called. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Then came the whispers, faint, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from every direction. Emily clutched Sophia's arm as a shadow shifted in the corner of the room. "Let's go back," Emily begged, her voice barely audible over her own heartbeat. But Sophia, entranced by the possibility of capturing something extraordinary, stepped forward. Suddenly, a guttural voice growled, "Stay." The flashlight flickered, and the temperature plummeted. A figure emerged from the shadows, dressed in a white coat, its face obscured by a surgical mask. The sisters froze, unable to move or speak. The figure raised a gloved hand, pointing toward an open doorway at the far end of the basement. "We need to leave," Emily cried, yanking Sophia toward the stairs. But the door slammed shut with a thunderous bang. Panic set in as the sisters struggled to open it. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, building into a cacophony of voices, each pleading, crying, and screaming. Sophia turned to face the room, but it was empty. No doctor, no shadow. Only the sound of her own ragged breathing. Back in their room, neither of them spoke, their shared silence heavy with dread. As Sophia checked her camera footage, her blood ran cold. The final frame showed her and Emily standing in the basement, the figure of Dr. Baker looming behind them. His mask had slipped, revealing hollow eyes and a twisted, unnatural grin. The next morning, the sisters packed hurriedly, desperate to escape. But as they drove away, Emily's phone buzzed. A notification appeared. "Asterisk, your room is ready. Welcome to the Crescent Hotel." Her trembling fingers opened the message. It showed a photo of room 419, their exact room number. But in the photo, the door was ajar, and Dr. Baker stood in the doorway, his hollow eyes staring straight at the camera. The Queen Mary, docked under the starlit sky of Long Beach, stood as a proud relic of the past. The ship's history as a luxurious ocean liner and wartime transport was well known, but it was her ghosts that lured Sam and Clara aboard. The couple had traveled from Chicago for a weekend stay, eager to experience the paranormal tales firsthand. As they boarded, the air felt unusually heavy, like the ship exhaled sorrow with each breeze. A guide, gruff and weathered, handed them their key with a warning: "Stay out of the pool room after dark." The words lingered in Clara's mind as they explored the vessel. Its grand halls, Art Deco decor, and creaking wooden floors painted a picture of opulence long past. Yet shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, and the faint scent of seawater clung to every corner. Their room, B340, was notorious for its haunted reputation. Clara set up her recorder as Sam unpacked. "Ready for ghost stories?" she asked, her tone lighter than her apprehension. As night fell, the whispers began. At first, Clara dismissed them as the sounds of the old ship settling, but when she heard a faint childlike giggle from the empty hallway, her blood ran cold. Sam, ever the skeptic, shrugged it off. "They're just trying to scare the guests." Determined to prove him wrong, Clara insisted they visit the pool room, infamous for its hauntings. The ship's indoor swimming pool, drained and abandoned, sat in eerie silence. Their flashlights illuminated crumbling tiles and the skeletal remains of diving boards. A plaque read, "For decades, passengers found relaxation here. Some never left." Asterisk Sam rolled his eyes, but Clara felt an oppressive presence pressing against her chest. She froze as the sound of splashing water echoed in the empty space. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Sam laughed nervously. Probably a prank. But the air grew icy and a low hum vibrated through the room. Clara pointed to the far end of the pool. A woman in a white bathing suit stood on the edge, her back to them. Her wet hair clung to her pale shoulders, and water dripped steadily onto the tiles. "Hello?" Clara called, her voice trembling. The woman turned slowly. Her face was beautiful, yet grotesque, her eyes dark hollows, her mouth a gaping void. Without a sound, she stepped forward, her feet never touching the ground. Clara stumbled back, her scream echoing, as the figure plunged into the empty pool, vanishing on impact. "Run!" Sam shouted, grabbing Clara's arm. They fled back to their room, locking the door behind them. Clara's heart raced as she tried to explain what she'd seen, but Sam dismissed it. "It's just your imagination." Hours passed, and Clara finally drifted into a restless sleep. But her dreams were filled with waterlogged corridors and the woman's hollow eyes. When she awoke, Sam was gone. "Sam," she called, her voice cracking. She searched the ship, her panic mounting. Finally, she returned to the pool room. There, floating face down in the dry basin, was Sam. His body was soaked, water pooling beneath him despite the empty pool. Clara screamed, but when she turned to run, she found herself standing on the edge of the pool. The woman in white stood beside her, her lips curling into a chilling smile. Clara felt a hand grip her ankle, pulling her downward. The next morning, the ship's staff found the pool room undisturbed, except for 2 pairs of wet footprints leading into the void. The Omni Parker House, nestled in the heart of Boston, stood as a monument to history and elegance. Its walls had hosted presidents, literary greats, and legends of the past, but whispers of hauntings clung to its reputation, especially to the infamous Mirror Room Asterisk, a suite where countless guests had reported inexplicable phenomena. Eager to experience the paranormal, history professor Daniel Price checked in late on a frigid November evening. He'd spent years debunking ghost stories, but the Parker house intrigued him. The thought of unraveling the mystery of its haunted mirror was too enticing to resist. The room was opulent, adorned with antique furniture and an ornate mirror that stretched from floor to ceiling. The frame, carved with intricate floral designs, seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light. Daniel stared at his reflection. For a moment, he thought he saw movement behind him. Just a trick of the light, he assured himself. Settling in, Daniel began reading about the mirror's history. It had belonged to the hotel's founder, Harvey Parker, who was said to watch over guests from the afterlife. Those who gazed too long into the mirror claimed to see figures, shadows, and sometimes Parker himself. At midnight, the air in the room grew heavy. The lamps flickered, and a faint chill crept across the floor. Daniel, ever the skeptic, decided to test the legend. Standing before the mirror, he whispered, "Harvey Parker, are you here?" The room fell silent. His reflection shimmered, the surface of the mirror rippling like water. Daniel's heart raced as the image of a man in 19th century attire appeared behind him, his expression stern, his eyes hollow. Daniel spun around, but the room was empty. "You're letting the stories get to you," he muttered, returning to bed. But sleep was elusive. The mirror seemed to hum softly, like a far-off voice calling his name. Hours later, Daniel awoke to the sound of shattering glass. The mirror remained intact, yet shards littered the floor, reflecting distorted versions of the room. As he bent to pick one up, he froze. His reflection in the shards was not his own. It was Harvey Parker, his face twisted in a sinister grin. A low voice echoed, "You shouldn't have called me." Panicking, Daniel fled the room, bolting down the grand staircase. The lobby was empty, eerily still. As he approached the concierge desk, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was Harvey Parker, his gaunt face illuminated by the flickering gaslight. "You were curious," Parker said, his voice reverberating through the space. "Now you belong to the house." Daniel stumbled back, his vision blurring. He felt his body pulled, weightless, through the air. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the mirror room, but something was wrong. His movements didn't feel his own, his limbs heavy and cold. Turning to the mirror, he screamed. Staring back at him was Harvey Parker, alive and well. Daniel's reflection, however, was pale and lifeless, trapped behind the glass. Parker adjusted his tie and smiled. "Enjoy your stay." Asterisk, twist ending. The story ends with Daniel trapped inside the mirror, replacing Harvey Parker's ghostly presence. Parker, now free, walks among the living once more, leaving the Omni Parker house to claim another victim. Visitors to the mirror room still report seeing shadows in the glass, their reflections not entirely their own. The Driscoll Hotel, with its grand limestone facade and lavish interiors, was a beacon of old Texas wealth and luxury. Built in 1886 by cattle baron Jesse Driscoll, it was also steeped in tragedy, its corridors echoing with the whispers of lives lost too soon. Lila, a travel writer drawn to tales of the supernatural, checked into room 525, infamous for the tragic story of a bride who had taken her life there. Lila arrived late, the Texas sky dark and heavy with rain. The hotel's towering arches and dimly lit lobby cast an air of foreboding. As she made her way to the room, the sound of soft laughter floated from the grand staircase. Glancing up, she thought she saw the fleeting image of a young girl in a white dress, her giggles trailing like echoes. Shaking off the unease, Lila unlocked her door. Room 525 was elegant, yet the air was stifling, heavy with an indefinable sadness. A faint scent of roses lingered, clinging to the air like a phantom perfume. She set up her laptop and began researching the hotel's ghostly lore. Stories of the bride who had taken her life on her wedding night after being left at the altar filled her with morbid curiosity. Hours passed, and the storm outside intensified. The lights flickered as the wind howled, rattling the windows. Just as Lila was about to turn in, the faint strains of music drifted through the air. She froze, her heart pounding. The melody of a waltz resonated, as though a grand ball was being held nearby. Drawn to the sound, she followed it to the ballroom. The room was dark, its chandeliers casting faint shadows, but the music played on. The air grew colder as she stepped inside. Suddenly, a soft glow illuminated the space, revealing couples dressed in 19th century attire dancing gracefully. Their faces were pale, their movements ethereal. "Hello?" "Hello?" Lila whispered, but no one turned. Her voice seemed swallowed by the music. A sharp laugh broke the rhythm, and she turned to see a woman standing alone by the grand staircase. She wore a tattered wedding gown, her veil fluttering as though caught in a breeze only she could feel. The bride's eyes were hollow, her smile twisted with sorrow. "You've come to dance," the bride said, her voice echoing as if it came from a great distance. "No, Lila began, but her feet betrayed her, stepping forward on their own accord. The bride reached out a hand, her fingers cold as ice as she took Lila into the waltz. The music swelled and the ballroom blurred, the ghostly figures around them laughing and whispering. Lila's mind screamed to stop, but her body moved to the rhythm, spinning faster and faster. The bride's face twisted, her hollow eyes boring into Lila's soul. The air grew thick with the scent of roses and cigar smoke. When the music stopped, Lila found herself back in her room. Drenched in sweat and trembling, she scrambled for her phone to call the front desk. But the screen showed a single message. "Thank you for the dance. Room 525 awaits its next guest." The door creaked open, and there on the bed lay a rose and a single wedding band. The Hotel Chelsea stood defiantly against the Manhattan skyline, its red brick facade and wrought iron balconies whispering secrets of decades past. Once a haven for artists, writers, and dreamers, its walls had also borne witness to tragedies that left behind a lingering darkness. For Sarah, an aspiring author with a fascination for the macabre, the Chelsea was both a muse and a mystery. When she booked Room 100, the infamous site of Nancy Spongeon's death, she couldn't resist the allure of its haunted history. The room was steeped in an eerie stillness, its dim light casting long shadows across the peeling wallpaper. A faint metallic scent lingered in the air, and Sarah shivered despite the warmth of the radiator. She unpacked her notebook and typewriter, determined to channel the room's energy into her work. But as the hours ticked by, a heaviness settled over her. The typewriter keys grew stiff, and her words seemed to vanish as quickly as she wrote them. Frustrated, she took a break, gazing at the room's lone window. The city's vibrant chaos outside felt worlds away from the oppressive quiet within. As midnight approached, Sarah heard it, a faint scratching, like nails dragging across wood. She froze, her eyes darting to the bathroom door. It creaked open slowly, revealing nothing but darkness. The scratching grew louder, and Sarah's breath quickened. "Is someone there?" she called, her voice wavering. Silence. Shaking, she stepped toward the bathroom. The air was icy, and the faint sound of a woman crying echoed within. When she flicked on the light, the room was empty, save for the words, "Help me," scrawled in condensation across the mirror. Sarah stumbled back, clutching her chest. The crying morphed into guttural laughter, echoing through the walls. She fled to the bed, her heart pounding, only to find her typewriter ticking on its own. The keys slammed violently, spelling out a single message. "Why didn't you save me?" Her blood ran cold. "Nancy," she whispered, as though expecting an answer. The temperature plummeted, and the room seemed to warp around her. Shadows twisted and writhed, and a figure materialized by the bed. It was a woman, her blonde hair matted, her pale skin smeared with blood. Nancy Spungen. "You're just like the rest," Nancy hissed, her voice like broken glass. "You watch, you write, but you never help. Asterisk!" Sarah screamed as Nancy lunged, her icy hands gripping Sarah's throat. Just as the world began to fade, Sarah bolted upright in bed, gasping for air. The room was silent. The typewriter was still. The bathroom door stood open, but nothing lay beyond it. Shaking, she gathered her things, determined to leave. But when she reached for the door, it wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows growing darker. A voice whispered in her ear, "You can never leave." The next morning, the hotel staff found room 100 in perfect condition, no sign of Sarah or her belongings. But guests who stayed there afterward reported strange occurrences, faint cries for help, ghostly messages on mirrors, and the sound of a typewriter clicking in the dead of night. Asterisk, asterisk, twist, ending. Sarah became another ghostly inhabitant of the Chelsea, trapped by the very story she sought to tell. Now she joins Nancy in haunting the room, warning visitors of the dangers of chasing the past. Some say the typewriter still types her unfinished manuscript, a chilling testament to her fate.